It's a blight on what is otherwise an almost flawless resume. There is a lot to criticize. There's a lot to not like. The handling, the camera, the voice acting, the design decisions, Yoshi. Dear God, how did they ruin Yoshi? And this.
Mama alone, you bad man. I won't let you take Mama Peach away. Mama Peach?
Heaven almighty, what were they thinking? Some would call this game a dumpster fire, and while I think that's a bit hyperbolic, I can't fault anyone for that line of thought. But I do think there is another way to view this game. It will require a little adjustment to our thinking and to move our perspective to a new lens. The lens of joy. It has become an evening tradition during this dumpster fire of a year for my daughter and I to play Mario games together. I needed something to do with her to get a hyperactive 2-year-old settled down to drink her juice mixed with Miralax. I needed her to drink because I needed her to poop because she decided to hold it for over 10 days. I'm sorry, but something you will learn about me is everything, and I mean everything, always comes back to poop somehow. So while we're playing Mario 64, her favorite parts of that game were the water levels, to my chagrin. So Super Mario Sunshine really got her attention, because that game is all about water. And her smile hardly ever faded as we played. She loved everything about it. She laughed at the silly monsters. She giggled as we cleaned up the chocolate. This game was her jam, man. See, she viewed this through a different lens than I. For her, it's not about design or fair challenge or extensive padding. To her, it was just Walt Disney color vomit on screen with a jumping obese plumber. And water. She viewed this through a completely different lens. That lens of joy. And I want to view this game as well through that same lens. And viewing it that way, I have a different perspective now. So join me, if you will, in the year 2002. The year of blonde frosted tips. Hello, gentlemen. 10 nations were added to the European Union this year, and the euro was officially adapted as the official currency of the EU. Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones came out, which was okay. And Sam Raimi's Spider-Man released close to it, creating the start of the superhero comic movie craze. And also the first of 3 times we've seen Spider-Man's origin on screen? Or is it 4 times? Does Captain America Civil War count? Or how about Into the Spider-Verse? Does anybody count those? I'm gonna count it. I'll count it. I'm counting it. Leonardo DiCaprio made his cinema comeback with Catch Me If You Can this year. Every teenage girl in America was obsessed with the Nicholas Sparks book movie A Walk to Remember, which would promptly be forgotten about and usurped by The Notebook 2 years later.
What do you want?
Oh, and comedy films took a giant dump this year. What were they thinking with Home Alone 4? French Stewart, why have you betrayed us? Why, French Stewart? Why? This is also the year that Nickelback came out with their hit How You Remind Me, and thus became an object of hate for us to vent our frustrations of a changing world onto. Michelle Branch released this gem as well, and it would be used in every high school graduation recap video for the rest of the decade. And United Airways filed for bankruptcy, Kmart filed for bankruptcy, the first large American retailer to do so, and NSYNC broke up. At least this was a year we got a new Mario game, am I right? Truly, this is the darkest timeline.
How would you feel about making a change?
We fear change.
The Nintendo GameCube launched in the fall of 2001, and while it did have a very impressive lineup of launch titles, conspicuously absent was a Mario game. I mean, every other Nintendo console before this, at least in America, launched with the Super Mario game. I guess Luigi's Mansion could count, but it would be an entire year before we saw Super Mario Sunshine come out, making it how long since the last Mario game came out? Hang on, let me check here. I'm checking, it's 6 years? That's a long time when you think about the fact that the NES saw 3 Mario games launch in the span of 5 years. The Super Nintendo launched with Super Mario World in 1991, and Super Mario All-Stars came out in 1993, which, at least for an American audience, had an unreleased Mario game, and then Super Mario 64 came out in 1996. And these are just the home console titles. That's not even including the Game Boy game releases during this time. And here's the kicker. Super Mario 64 is the last original new mainline Mario game of the 90s. The Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance wouldn't get an original Mario game, only remakes of classic Mario titles with updated visuals and gameplay elements. Fun fact, Mario, Nintendo's mascot, does not have an original title for 2 of Nintendo's consoles, the Game Boy Color and the Game Boy Advance. 3 if you count the Virtual Boy, but we're not counting it. While the Zelda franchise would get an original title for every single Nintendo console. Once again excluding Virtual Boy because it doesn't count. Also, I'm considering Breath of the Wild a Wii U original, even though it was a Switch launch and I only played it on the Switch, but since there will be a direct sequel only for Switch, I will consider it the first Wii U game to be ported to the Switch. For now, I reserve the right to change my mind, cause I can. In August of 2002, almost a full year after the GameCube was launched, Super Mario Sunshine was released. Not only is this the anticipated follow-up to the critically acclaimed, universally adored Super Mario 64, this is the first new and original Mario game on any platform in 6 years. The hype was real. And it didn't live up to it. Super Mario Sunshine would be the first mainline Super Mario game to not be directed by either Shigeru Miyamoto or Takahashi Tezuka, the original creators of Super Mario Bros. Instead, Miyamoto would serve as a general overseer and Takahashi Tezuka would serve as the game producer. The director of the project would be Yoshiaki Koizumi, who worked on Mario 64 as a level designer. Nintendo's methodology for developing a new game could be kind of freeform. Typically, it works out pretty well. They don't always set out with making a certain type of game and then figure out the hook from there. Instead, they'll fiddle with an interesting concept or mechanic idea and figure out if it fits one of their franchises from there, or if it should be its own new IP. They will then follow the creative logic from source of the original idea. This is how we got Splatoon. Yoshiaki Koizumi came up with the main mechanic for Super Mario Sunshine when playing around with the GameCube controller's analog triggers. They reminded him of a water pistol. He wanted to create a game around that. He started with the idea of a character who used a water pistol. From there, he asked basic questions. When do you use a water pistol? And who uses a water pistol, typically? This led to him thinking of children playing with water pistols in the summer, which led to setting the game in a tropical paradise where the sun shines all year long. But what would you do with that water pistol? I mean, besides shooting enemies. He came up with the idea of cleaning things up like graffiti. Nintendo decided that the best fit for this mechanic Koizumi created was with a Mario game, which did have some internal strife. See, Mario had never used a tool before, as a core mechanic at least. I mean, maybe the boot in Super Mario Bros. 3? And there was question about if this would feel like a Mario game or would it feel too different. And by having it set in the tropics, there was a question about Mario's outfit. Would he wear his red shirt and blue overalls? Would he be Mario if he wore something else? It was decided the only change to his costume would be his shirt, which would now be short sleeves. Obviously, they had no such qualms about costume changes for Super Mario Odyssey. They also changed the water pistol to a water pump so that way it wouldn't be construed as a gun and could go over better with being a family game. Mario is Nintendo. He is their main mascot, the very identity of the Nintendo brand itself. While they needed to have something new and novel, they also needed to make sure Mario would still be recognizable as Mario in every conceivable way. So there was a lot of discussion about what made Mario, Mario, and they didn't want that to be lost. But since Luigi used a tool in Luigi's Mansion, they decided it was okay for Mario to do so as well. And to also help balance out the newness of FLUDD, they made sure to stick to a lot of concepts from Super Mario 64 to keep things very familiar.
We fear change.
This is the conundrum of Super Mario Sunshine. On one hand, the addition of FLUDD is wonderfully integrated with the movement set of Mario established in Super Mario 64, though they did get rid of the long jump and the backflip high jump, which is sad. It is a fun addition with the twist on the Mario power-up idea, and it works. This time with different nozzles for your water pump rather than hats or mushrooms and flowers. On the other hand, the designers relied heavily on the ideas that made Super Mario 64 a huge success, so his movement is largely the same, save for the moves they subtracted from his momental arsenal. And courses were designed to ensure they felt similar to the freewheel exploration that made Super Mario 64 so fun. But some of the best moments of gameplay are the times when FLUDD is actually stripped away from you and you have to rely on your platforming skills. Really, Super Mario Sunshine is a tale of two games. There's a lot to not like about this game. FLUDD and how it impacts Mario's movement and platforming prowess is not among them, even though FLUDD does cause a schism in the game design, taking a platformer and turning it into a third-person shooter at times. Taking a page from Mario 64, his jump is still integral to his movement, but once again, his design is based on his momentum and not on precise platforming. But with the addition of FLUDD, the designers were able to give players a safety net and incorporate some more precise platforming than Mario 64 had. FLUDD comes equipped with two basic nozzles. The standard nozzle, which is used to clean graffiti and shoot at enemies, and then the hover nozzle, which is used to hover, obviously, for a limited time. While this does take away from needing to be perfect in your platforming, it adds that much needed safety net for players as platforming game design was still getting figured out for the 3D realm at this point. The addition of FLUDD becomes a double-edged sword here. On one hand, its augmentation of Mario's movement and momentum is dynamic and fun. How hard you press the analog trigger slowly ramps up the water pressure. If you hold the trigger almost all the way down, just shy of the click when it's fully depressed, Mario will spray water at full blast while running around at full speed. Click the trigger all the way down and he'll stand in place to spray water and giving you more precision of where you spray. This gives you choice. Keep your momentum while clearing enemies and obstacles from your path, or stop movement for precise shooting to take care of specific enemies and areas covered in the goop. FLUDD gives you more choice and control over Mario's momentum in this game as well. You can use FLUDD to spray water in front of you and then dive into the wet area and Mario will slide further and faster. Or you can use a hover nozzle to slow down and be precise in your platforming. While it does take away some momentum, it doesn't inhibit it, rather it gives a player choice in how to use Mario's momentum. It's kind of cool how they took the novel idea of FLUDD and the original concepts established in Mario 64 and combined them mostly seamlessly. But on the other hand, FLUDD causes a schism in this game. While there are plenty of moments where FLUDD augments Mario's movement and momentum, giving the player choice in how and when to use it, there are other moments where FLUDD is used to slow things down to a crawl, or even to a complete stop. There are some enemies, bosses, and obstacles that allow you to choose how to encounter and how to use FLUDD, but there are others where it turns Mario into a shooter, and Mario has to plant his feet, stand still, and carefully aim. And don't get me started on that last Bowser course. What were they thinking? This is a big part of the problem with Super Mario Sunshine, making it the black sheep of the entire series. While FLUDD is integrated really well into Mario's moveset, the nature of the device created a schism in the gameplay, making the designers choose between creating platforming challenges or shooter challenges. Rarely are the two intertwined, and intertwined well. But that's not even the biggest problem.
Exactly how does the suck cut work?
Well, as you can see, it sucks as it cuts.
It certainly does suck.
Turn it off, man! Turn it off! It's sucking my will to live!
Mario Sunshine doesn't have one or two glaring problems. It's the little things that does its adventure in. It's the camera, the faulty collision detection, and most of all, the padding that slows progression to a frustrating crawl. What was great about Mario 64 is you could boot it up, hop in a painting, play for 10 minutes or so, and get a star. Hop in, hop out, had a nice little smoke break from work, and made some progress in the game. While Super Mario Sunshine has that for some of its stars, which are now called shines, and others it's unnecessarily padded. Here's the rub though, Mario Sunshine had to do a lot with a little. Similar to Mario 64, the team once again found themselves crunched for time. Development time for the game itself was done over the course of a year and a half, and seeing how the game was released a full year after the GameCube was launched, it appears that active development didn't start until 6 or so months before the launch of the GameCube. And a Nintendo console without a Mario game is just not a Nintendo console. And also to help push sales of the GameCube, Nintendo needed to get a Mario product out the door as soon as possible. And obviously this cut into how much content they could develop for the game. Mario Sunshine has just 7 open-ended courses, with 1 linear course for the end fight, making a total of 8 courses. This is not including the hub world of Delfino Plaza. That's half of what Mario 64 had. Now, granted, at least these courses were much larger than the Mario 64 courses, but this still is a significant less amount of content than Mario 64 had to work with. There is data within the game code that alludes to 4 more courses that were planned, and that Corona Mountain, well, that's an unfortunate name, ain't it? Was going to be a full-fledged course like the others, but those extra courses never made it into the game, and Corona Mountain was streamlined. Mario 64 set the expectation for length and breadth of content. Seeing that we are once again tasked with collecting a type of star, or in this case, shine sprites, it would have been insane not to have 120 of them like Super Mario 64 had. So they had to up the shine count per level this go around. Each course now has 8 shines, with a 9th for getting 100 coins, a 10th for doing the secret level 8 coin time challenge, and an 11th for finding the super hard to find secret shine in the course. With 7 courses and 11 shines each, that only gets you to 77 shines. 78 once you get the shine for defeating Bowser, and 79 when you count the shine you get from the very start of the game. That leaves just 41 more shines they have to figure out how to jam in there. What do you add? How do you get to that magical 120 shine number? Well, first you add some secret shines in the hub world, just like Mario 64. There's 15 of them in this one. Then add collectibles. Collect blue coins throughout the game to get 24 more shines. And 1 more shine you have to get by going back to the airstrip from the start of the game. And here's the problem. These blue coins, they're arduous. I didn't do it. Heck, I barely beat this game. This slows the whole thing to a crawl. Finding and getting blue coins, not fun, man. Not a treat. No bueno. There are a lot of shines in here that take too long to get. You can't just hop in and hop out like before. There are entire play sessions where it feels like you don't make progress. It's frustrating and feels fruitless. This is on top of the fact that some of the main shines and some of the levels themselves are not fun to find and get. They too slow parts down to an absolute crawl, and sometimes your success or failure is down to the luck of the draw. One of the biggest offenders is this shine sprite in Rico Harbor. In order to get the shine, you have to get this Yoshi out of its egg. To get it out of its egg, you need that specific fruit it is thinking of. To get that fruit, you have to ground pound these buttons on these tanks to release fruit, but the fruit is randomized. Sometimes you get the fruit on the first try. Most times you don't. Sometimes you could be doing this ground pound for 10 minutes to get the exact fruit you need, and you can't carry it. Oh no, this particular fruit you can only kick, even though every other fruit can be carried. So if you accidentally kick it into the water, you have to do it all over again. But wait, that's not all. The shine you need Yoshi to get is on this platform over the water, and you have to use Yoshi's vomit ability to turn these fish into platforms and make your way to the right platform with the shine. Except there isn't a clear critical path, and if you fall into the water, Yoshi drowns and disappears, and you have to do the fruit pound all over again. this isn't the only offender. There are many offenders in this game, like trying to propel the boat in Corona Mountain on the level with very limited water. And every course has a shine sprite where you need to chase Shadow Mario and catch him, and it gets old fast. It slows things down. It's padding. It's not just one thing in this game that taints Mario's good name. It's all the little stuff added on top of each other. I feel like every game has that moment, that part you hate, that is almost universally hated, that slows things down. But once you pass it, it's back to greatness. This game has like 1,000 of those. They're not big, but they add up, and add up, and add up. We all know this. We're all aware of this. And like I said at the beginning of this video, I don't want to end here. What I actually want to do is change your perspective on this title. I want you to look at it how Miyamoto might look at it, how my daughter definitely looks at it.
Camera 1, camera 2. Camera 1, camera 2. Camera 1, camera 2. Camera 1, camera 2.
Shigeru Miyamoto has a very specific view of video games. He views them as toys. Not to say he views them only for children, he views them as virtual playgrounds. The very act of just running and jumping and playing with no purpose should be joyful and fun, even if you're not accomplishing a task or completing a goal. Playing around is just as fun as trying to complete the challenge. Just listen here to how he describes designing World 1-1 of Super Mario Bros.
ポインって言って嬉しいので次のハテナをポインって叩くと出てくる。いやーって見ようと思ったら当たってしまうと。で、当たってしまったつもりが大きくなったっていうのでここでものすごく嬉しくなる。
Did you hear what words he used to describe how a player would feel about hitting a question block and getting the super mushroom? He used the words, "It makes them feel happy." What a wonderful way to describe game feel. He doesn't boil it down to psychology and dopamine releases from sound effects and whatnot. He makes it a heart issue. It's something felt in the soul. Playing this game with my daughter changed my perspective on Sunshine. Sure, it's not the best. Arguably, it's the worst.
Ugh, you're the worst.
But there is a certain amount of joy found in the design, the movement, and the gameplay. To my daughter, the mud covering the levels looked like chocolate, so she was excited just to clean the chocolate up and then fight the chocolate monster. This fight with Petey Piranha, to me, was frustrating, but to her, he was silly and funny. She wouldn't stop laughing at it. Who can argue against that? There are a lot of merits to judge this game against, and on the normal ones, it falls short, way short. But what if the next time you plug this game in, you change how you approach it? Don't worry about beating it. Don't worry about collecting all 120 shines. Don't fret about the controls and the camera, and please, for the love of everything righteous and holy, ignore the story. Instead, just open it up and play. Jump, run, slide, spin, flip, hop on Yoshi and puke on some Delfinoans. Just have fun. Experience some joy. Approach it from this different angle. Relax, let your mind go, and experience through the lens of joy like a child would. Think back to when you were a little kid and you first discovered games. Some of the best times was just getting lost in the joy of making Mario flip around like Yoda. You can still do that. It's a video game, for heaven's sake. Let's go and have some fun. Approach it like a Michael Bay movie. Michael Bay movies aren't good movies. They're not meant to be analyzed. They barely are meant to make sense. They're just meant to be enjoyed for what they are. Pretty pictures with awesome fireworks and great cinematic moments. Approach Sunshine like that. It's still fun. There's still joy. Run, jump, and play. It's a playground. Have some fun. And party on, man.
Isn't it great that we're all better people? Fishy!